Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the AIP Native Launchpad Liftoff webinar, which will provide you information on the Native Launchpad Fellowship, the application form, and the review process. This is Ed Bourgeois, Program Manager of Advancing Indigenous Performance, or AIP. I'm joined today by Qacung Blanchett, who is Chair of the AIP Steering Committee, and by a former Native Launchpad artist, Delbert Anderson, from the 2019 cohort. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that Western Arts Alliance and AIP are located in what is now called Portland, Oregon, on the ancestral homelands of bands of Chinook, Cathlamet, Multnomah, Clackamas, Tualatin, Kalapuya, and Molalla peoples, and other tribes who have made their homes along the Willamette and Columbia rivers for millennia. They were forcibly removed to reservations in the early 1800s to make way for American settlers arriving on the Oregon Trail, and still they remain, despite genocide, displacement, and erasure. We wish to honor the ancestors, their descendants, and the generations to come, the caretakers and kin to these lands, these waters, and the non-human relations. We invite all of you participants, all attendees, to introduce yourselves and acknowledge the lands you reside upon in the chat box. Let's get started with a short overview of AIP.
Introducing the Advancing Indigenous Performance Program, an initiative of Western Arts Alliance, which is respectfully based on traditional Native homelands in what is now called Portland, Oregon. Advancing Indigenous Performance, or AIP, was founded in 2018 with the aim to provide educational and professional development resources for US-based Native artists and for presenters that will build audiences for Indigenous performing arts. The program is open to Native artists living in the United States and its territories. The AIP initiative is comprised of 3 programs: the Native Launchpad, an individual artist fellowship program, the Native Artist Opportunity Fund, and the Touring Fund, which matches touring grants made by regional arts organizations to presenters of Indigenous performances. For more information on advancing Indigenous performance, contact Program Manager Ed Bourgeois at westarts.org.
All right, and we're going to go ahead with Qacung, if you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and we'll move on with the next part of the program, introducing the AIP Native Launchpad.
Welcome everybody. Good morning. Qacung Blanchett, thank you so much, everybody. It's good morning. This is Qacung. I'm zooming in from Juneau, Alaska. Super happy to be here. I'm one of the members of the AIP committee, chair of the committee, and very excited to tell you about our program that I absolutely adore so much. Our focus today is on the Native Launchpad, the cornerstone of the AIP initiative. Each year, a cohort of 4 performing artists is selected in this highly competitive national grant program. The 3-year individual artist fellowship provides artists with tools and resources needed to further their career and deepen their connection to the world of arts presenting and management. Over the 3 years, each awardee receives direct financial and travel support, mentoring and coaching, career development and networking opportunities, and promotional benefits, altogether valued at about $40,000. In addition, they're given the opportunity to perform in official showcase programs as a part of WA's annual conference. Before we dive into the details of the award and application, we'd like to acknowledge the support which makes the Native Launchpad and all of the AIP programs possible. AIP was established in 2018 with the generous lead support from the Andrew Mellon Foundation and the Doris Duke Charitable Foundations, both of whom continue to underwrite the program, along with additional funding from the National Endowment for the Arts, the partnership with the regional arts organizations, New England Foundation for the Arts, or NEFA, Mid-Atlantic Arts, Arts Midwest, and West Staff. We thank them for their support of Native performance. Ed?
Awesome. Thank you, Qacung. So let's dig into the details of the Native Launchpad. Who should apply? How do you apply? What can you expect from the fellowship? And that question leads me to introduce a recent Native Launchpad artist to get his take on those questions, how he's used the award to further his work. Delbert, can I ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're from and your artistic practice?
Thanks, Ed. My name is Delbert Anderson. I'm from Farmington, New Mexico, the traditional lands of the Diné Bikéyah. I'm a trumpet artist, composer, and educator, and I come from the Diné tribe. And just, I guess, a really quick, brief intro. A lot of the things that I do involves, they're inspired by Indigenous, could be healing, teaching, or stories. And so I've been able to create that into a show in that I can present to anyone, basically anyone. It fits a whole group of people. Let's see here. When I started, before I received the Native Launchpad in 2019, my career was, I would say, a little below mid-career, meaning I was only playing at local gigs, hardly ever leaving New Mexico. I had a show, only one show, and actually that show only consisted of music. There wasn't really any meaning involved or other types of stories linked to or content or context linked to my art. But when I began to apply, I figured out really quickly that everyone needs something that they can present. Luckily, I had a lot of things in place already before receiving the award. In other words, I felt like I was a little more prepared, a prepared artist. And once this opportunity presented itself, I was able to capture and, hop on the ride of all of the help financially, network wise. It seems like after I received the Native Launchpad, I started to pay more attention to content and to the context of things, and also networking and relationship building became very important as I was going through the program. And so, the network side of things was very great, as well as the hard-earned cash that you received. I believe I used mine on, it was just before the pandemic of 2020. So I was able to get studio equipment, notation software, recording software, in addition to the network that the people you meet and the relationships you start to build. I quickly began to collaborate with other Native Launchpad artists. I believe Julia Keefe is one, Charlie Lowry. We all kind of made our own network, and that has been growing, and people have been taking notice of the sort of clique that we developed here. And it's a very great program. And, it was very specific to what I needed. It wasn't sort of just a one kind of program that is for everyone. I remember having a mentorship because we weren't really visible to many people. WA decided that I would do very well with a marketing specialist. So I was paired with David Greenberg from Music Works International, who took me under his wing, and we started talking about network and how to be to get more visible. And so that was sort of my where I was at in my career, what I needed in order to take the next step. And that has grown into sort of not now we play all over the US, and also beginning to outreach to international audiences, as well as music licensing and just so many different things in the music world and industry other than performance. They have all definitely took a major leap.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Delbert. We'll come back and talk and ask you some more questions about some of the tools that you used, and specifically about the mentorship in more depth. Meantime, let's go to the guidelines and talk about the details of the program, the basics, what you'll find in the application guidelines, the who, how, and when of applying. So you can return to these guidelines, and you can find links to frequently asked questions and the application itself on the AIP page on the WA website. WA that website is westarts.org/AIP. We'll get you to the full AIP page. And specifically for this application, westarts.org/native-launchpad. We'll put that on the screen a little bit later so you can write it down. As we proceed, feel free to ask clarifying questions in the chat box, and we'll monitor that and take some regular pauses to answer your questions. So the basics. The Native Launchpad Award is a 3-year artist fellowship, which includes the following components: financial support. There's $17,000 in direct support over 3 years, $10,000 in year 1, $5,000 in year 2, $2,000 in year 3. And each one of those years, 25% of that is unrestricted. That means we just send you a check for 25% of that. You can use it for anything, for rent if you need to. The other 75% is restricted to expenses directly related to career development. There's travel support. The Native Launchpad artists receive travel support, including airfare, lodging, per diem, as well as membership and registration fees to attend the WA conference for 3 years and the APAP, or Association of Performing Arts Professionals conference in New York City for 2 years. Each year, the fellowship, the artist is paired with a mentor, as Delbert mentioned, who is compensated for up to 10 hours of coaching to work with the artist on areas they feel they could use support. Together, they create a work plan for the fellowship to guide their work together and assess progress towards their stated goals. AIP maintains a year-round career development program for Native Launchpad artists and associate artists with special topic webinars and monthly check-in Zoom calls, which are really great for peer-to-peer learning and that network that Delbert mentioned. AIP provides promotional benefits to Native Launchpad artists through artist profiles on the website, spotlight articles in the WA newsletter, and we host an AIP booth at the conferences from which the artists can network, distribute materials, and set meetings. Native Launchpad artists each receive a spot in the official showcase at the annual WA conference in the 2nd year of your fellowship. The showcase is attended by presenters and agent managers from around the US and abroad. So, Qacung, selection and eligibility. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Brianna, Ed. I'm going to talk a little bit about selection. A panel of Indigenous performing artists professionals adjudicates applications, scoring and ranking candidates within disciplines. And the AIP Steering Committee makes final selections based primarily on scores, but also with consideration for factors such as a balance of discipline, gender, geographic representation. 4 artists are offered the Native Launchpad Fellowship, and up to 5 associate artists are invited to access career development and networking resources. The eligibility for this is to those that are eligible, or applicants must be US-based professional performing artists at any stage in their career. The grant is competitive and is generally awarded to performers with some history of touring and a level of tour readiness, but who have not reached a point where they already have established networks and steady, high visibility touring. Native Launchpad is a career development program whose resources are applied where they will have the most impact on careers, and awards tend to go to mid-career artists. Be US-based or have permanent resident status. Awardees will be expected to complete an IRS form W-9 to receive the funds. You must be 18 years of age or older. And you can find the information on these programs on our website, of course, westernarts.org.
Okay, thank you. And there are a couple more. To be eligible, you should be planning tour work within the coming 3 years. And while we understand that the definition of touring is in flux, that's changing, markets are changing, successful applicants will be those whose work samples and ongoing practices demonstrate readiness to develop and share live performance. You must self-identify as Indigenous. And for this purpose, AIP defines Indigenous or Native as a member or descendant of a Native American, Alaska Native, or Native Hawaiian nation or community, including the U.S. territories of American Samoa, Guam or Guam, Northern Marianas Islands, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Applicants will be considered whose communities may lie within the colonial borders of Canada and Mexico, if those communities are bisected by the border. In other words, examples of this would be the Blackfeet and Blackfoot, who are on both sides of Montana and Alberta, the Haudenosaunee, Tohono O'odham peoples, whose community is bisected by the border. Ineligible examples would be members of Indigenous or First Nations solely within Canada and Mexico, who now live, even if you now live within the United States. It's about supporting U.S. based, but also U.S. Tribal communities. If you have questions, and I'm sure there will be specific to your identity, please feel free to reach out directly. This can be a very complex subject. Also, the program is open to any performing arts discipline suitable for touring. We've made awards to multidisciplinary artists, including installation artists, but their practice must include performance as a core component. The award cycle. This is basically the timeline. Applications open today and can be accessed on the WA website. The deadline to receive applications is Wednesday, February 1st at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Then adjudication panels review for 6 weeks, and the AIP committee has 4 weeks to complete the selection process, and that may include interviews with finalists. Announcement of awards will take place on May 1st, 2023. And then the fellowship itself begins, if you're selected, on July 1st, 2023, and ends 3 years later, June 30th, 2026. In May and June, awardees are onboarded with interviews to determine needs assessment and the assigning of mentors. Awardees will be asked to supply materials such as high-res photos and bios to help the WA communications manager develop official announcement and promotional assets. And then in July and August, mentor artist pairs develop work plans addressing the artist's stated goals for the fellowship and a budget for the use of the award funds. And then finally, the awardees attend the WA conference in Seattle in September. That's the week of September 5th through the 8th, and the APAP conference in January in New York City. I see we have some questions in the chat, so let's go ahead and take them one at a time. Chantil asks about the frequency of the mentorship. We mentioned 10 hours of mentorship. What's the frequency? That is per year. So in each year of the 3-year fellowship, it doesn't sound like a lot, 10 hours, but that's the maximum that we have budget funding to support the mentor. So the mentor is paid $100 fee per hour. So it's $1,000 for that year, for that pairing. And a lot of pairs, will have phone calls and go beyond the hours that we can compensate for, and form relationships and talk and chat and email beyond that. But that's what we have budget to support the mentor at, 10 hours per year. And another detail is that you don't have to have the same mentor for 3 years. You may have different things that one mentor works on the business side with you. One may be cultural or artistic. You may have different needs that you need support for, and you can select different mentors for that. Another question. And that was the only question so far. So let's go ahead and move on, and we'll have more questions coming up. Please clarify about the 25%. Okay, so each year, 25%. So in the first year, it's $10,000. $2,500 of that is just sent to you as a check, and that 25%. In the second year, it's 25% of 5,000. In the second year, it's 25% of 2,000, and the rest is restricted for the career development aspect of your fellowship. And that budget for what you spend that money on should be based on sort of a work plan that you come up with your mentor. Maybe when we take the next little break, we can ask Delbert about some more specifics about what he spent funds on. It's different for every artist, but it needs to be, the restricted portion needs to be career related. Let's take a look at the actual application to make sure, if you feel like you're going to apply, you don't have any questions there. The link on the WA website will take you to the submittable platform, which, if you haven't used before, will prompt you to create an individual account that's tied to your email. And that's the platform that we use to accept and process applications. Once you've accessed the application, this is what you should see. I'm going to share my screen. So this is the actual application form as it appears on Submittable. And the application has 3 sections: applicant information, applicant narrative, and work samples and supporting documents. Now you can leave and return to the application at any time by using the save. This is really important. By using the save draft button at the bottom of the page. If you've used Submittable before, you're used to this. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom here and show you. There is this save draft button. Don't leave the page without hitting that, or you're going to lose the information that you've input. And once you've done it once, you won't do it again. But that's a really important little thing to remember. Save your drafts. So section 1 asks information about you, the applicant. So the title here is, there are artists who may have a stage name or an act name, the name of an ensemble or a specific project that you're intending to tour using this fellowship. For most artists, it's simply the name you use as a performer. Please note that if you apply as an ensemble, only one person, the applicant, receives the fellowship and benefits. We've had cases of duos and ensembles, but duos in particular, one artist has to apply and receive the support, not both. Partners or ensemble members may be able to attend, for instance, conferences, but their travel wouldn't be covered or subsidized by the award, only the applicants. Next is performance category. We tend to receive 50% of the applications from musical artists and 50% from all other disciplines. So we have these 2 super categories for adjudication, panel assignment. You'll have an opportunity a little farther down to be more specific about your discipline. Then name, the person who would receive the award. Your address, phone, email are mandatory, so we can contact you with any questions. Indigenous identity, this is the short answer. Don't worry if you're not an official tribal member. You'll have a chance to go into more detail in a subsequent section. Your website, if you don't have one, please list a Facebook page or other social. Artistic discipline, you can select more than one and or provide detail in the text box. certification of age and citizenship. That's pretty self-explanatory. You have to be a U.S. citizen because we need to get a W-9 to pay you. And the purpose of the funding of the program is really to help US-based Indigenous artists catch up with the other nations around us. You know, our colleagues in Aotearoa, in Australia and Canada, have much more financial resource, many more options available to them. So we're really trying to catch up US-based artists. Next is the narrative section, section 2. So here, the artist statement, you just tell us about your work, what you make and why. Statement of Indigenous identity. This is where you can get more specific about your personal, family, community identity. A lot of people have very complicated identity, and this is where you would talk about it. There's plenty of characters to do that. Statement of touring goals. Western Arts Alliance is a membership organization of presenters, artists, managers, and artists with a focus on touring. You may have goals which include or don't include the commercial market, but focus on specific engagements or specific communities, your community. This is where you can make a case for the Native Launchpad advancing or sustaining your practice and goals, which may or may not be commercial touring. Outcomes, this is where we'd like you to tell us what you'd hope to achieve as a Native Launchpad awardee. Be as specific as possible. And then section 3, work samples and supporting documents. We require live performance video, and there's a place here for 2 of them. These work samples should be of recent work performed for a live audience if possible. We understand pandemic impacts everything, but as recent as possible and with a live audience. The jury will not consider promotional videos, TV news features, and that kind of thing for the purpose of assessing the artistic portion of your application. Paste URLs and make sure that passwords are not required, please. If you have any questions about that, the performance videos, please reach out. And then supporting documents, we'd like to see a resume or a CV of your performance, your artistic work, a high-res headshot, if that's possible, if you have one. Letter of recommendation. We ask that you supply the email address of a person who would supply a letter rather than asking you to procure it. Which can it's a lot of pressure to put onto an applicant. We feel that it's easier for you to notify the person that you'd like to use them as a reference and have them send or put the actual reference into the platform so that you don't have to be the go-between. This should be someone who's presented or produced your work or is familiar with you as a touring artist. There's a place for you to write a personal message to accompany our official email requesting a letter from your recommender. But of course, we recommend, as I said, that you contact them, let them know you've named them before you submit your application. They'll be able to either attach the document or type the recommendation directly into the platform. And applicants will not be penalized if the recommender fails to submit by the deadline, but a positive recommendation will always increase your scores and be really helpful in supporting your application. So then touring history, you can upload a file, a list of engagements. If your touring history is on your website, you can substitute a link to that page. Electronic press kit and tech writer, not everybody has one. If you don't worry about that. They're not required. And very often these are elements that artists develop once they get the Native Launchpad Award. These are the kinds of tools that help you in your career. And if that's something you need, that's something you use your funds for. Press and additional supporting documents, you can upload 3 files in each of those categories. And then finally, we'd like to make sure in the final selection process, it's often instructive for the AIP committee to talk to you directly in order to assess the degree to which your goals and expectations align with the program's developmental goals. It is a development program, so that's why we said at the beginning, a lot of mid-career artists tend to get this. If you already have a full touring career, it's questionable whether you require the kind of development that or the kinds of tools that the program can offer. Very often those artists already have those tools. They're already touring. So anyway, let us know if you're welcome to be interviewed and available to meet the committee face-to-face. It's sometimes in determining the between the finalists, it's really helpful to know where you plug into the program and which candidates it would be most helpful for. So just let us know if you're available for that. And then finally, how did you hear about the opportunity? We're always trying to expand the reach of AIP, and it helps to know where you learned about this opportunity. It could be a regional arts organization, a state arts council newsletter, the WA website, word of mouth. It's helpful for us to know how best to promote AIP. Wow, I think I'm done talking for a little bit. Qacung, we're going to unshare the screen, and then Qacung, if you would, maybe talk a little bit about, you're the chair of the AIP committee, and you've participated in this selection, the adjudication process over every year that it's been in existence. Is there anything you would like to amplify for the applicants? What are some characteristics from your perspective of a really strong application?
Guiano for that, Ed. Yeah, no, this is, like I mentioned before, the AIP program. I've been a part of it since the beginning and absolutely love it. It's actually one of the reason why I started engaging with WA, and my first engagement was sitting on a adjudication panel. And that was my connection to WA and of course the AIP program. But yeah, I think, as a panelist member, one of the things I really look at would emphasize folks to really think about is a really good, strong artist statement. We want to know why you do what you do. And then the next thing I would say, and maybe even I would emphasize this more, is just strong work samples. We need to see it. We have just a small section of time to be able to look at all the applications that are coming across our screen. And those ones that stand out are those ones that have, without a doubt, a sample that we can really connect with. And so just think about what that is that you want to put forward. You want to put your best foot forward and your strongest foot forward. And I know that it's not, it doesn't have to be a high level recording, music video, that kind of stuff. And we definitely don't want the promotional stuff. No matter how many times we put it on into the application, the guidelines do not put on promotional materials. There's always at least a couple that come across, and that's what's there. And it's like, oh gosh, darn it. But yeah, I would say just really think about your work sample. Because when we're looking at these, that's one of the main things that we just kind of lean on. Delbert, you've been on the panel, and you were on the panel last year. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I agree. A lot of work on the artist statement, but also how it connects to your Indigenous identity. I think that was very important. And the other thing is, a lot of the panelists, musicians, will be, looking at musician applications. So it's not like someone who doesn't know the field is going to be holding these applications. So that was one thing that I thought was very, very nice to know. You can really tell when all the information is there. And I think just being honest at where you're at, being very humble at what you need, and make that very direct. and I think it would go fine. I love the process and how everything is structured, and it's done that way. So the people who really do need help get help, and yeah, move forward.
Thanks, Delbert. I think that's really important, what you mentioned about the flexibility, and there are some questions in the chat that I think this sort of reinforces. One is this program asks you to self-identify. It's not as strict as a lot of programs about being enrolled, or because everybody has a different story, and we want to honor those things. So the other part of it is, if there's something about your application that you're not sure about, that's what the narrative sections are there for, is for you to make your case. You may feel like there's something that could undermine your application. Well, then talk about it. Convince the panel of the work that you do, the story that you tell, where you're from, who you represent, and those things. There are no black and white, cut and dry answers in this process, and that's we want everyone to understand that. Let me just list out these questions that are in the chat. We wanted to clarify, number one, that for eligibility, that permanent residents are eligible. Yes, you can have been born elsewhere if it's a tribe that's, as we said, connected to what are U.S. tribes, according to the colonial borders. We're just, again, that's somewhere that in the narrative section, if you're really not sure, is this going to cut it or not, either call and ask the question or talk about it in that narrative section. If you have a convincing argument about your eligibility, then make it. One question, can you apply to other performing arts organizations while applying to WA? Yes, of course. This is a fellowship. It doesn't restrict you from having other fellowships at the same time. Are touring resources, travel costs covered through the 75% career building portion of the grant, or are they provided in addition? So those travel costs to the WA and APAP conferences are separate. They're not they don't count, they're not taken from your award. You may want to use award money to go to other conferences in addition, and some artists do that. If you're a musician, you might want to go to Folk Arts International. You may want to go to CNARS. There's so many different networking conferences that you could go to, but the WA and the APAP, we cover those. What is your definition of a touring artist? There's been a pandemic, which has made it difficult to tour. We are totally behind you on that. We totally get, you're talking to two touring artists right here who that 2020, 2021 year was terrible for both these artists, having cancellations and postponements, and the whole industry is changing as a result of the pandemic. That's something that we feel that Indigenous artists lead the way on, that conversation about what touring should be. The heavy carbon footprint, the use of local artists. There's so many ways that what Indigenous artists have to offer is outside of the commercial market, and it may be completely related to your community. So that's, again, a place where you make your case, and there's no wrong answer, because there are lots of artists who have gone through the program and realized they don't want to do that big venue tour. They want to work in their communities, and that's the important thing. So again, that's not a yes or no answer. It's what your definition of a touring artist is that's important, because it's changing for everybody. It's the bottom line is that it's about performing arts. So it's not for visual artists. It can be for multidisciplinary artists that include visual art, if performance is part of what you do, and that's the part that you're emphasizing here. That's the part that you're trying to build up. Carolina asks, what if you're not connected to your border tribe? So Carolina, that's you should maybe contact us directly and talk about that. That's again a place where displacement, being adopted out, there's so many, everyone has a different story, and it's not yes or no. So you can call and talk with us about that, but also state your case. But we're just not in the position to support artists who may have access to funding from another country that would be in place of an artist that we all know the U.S. that is really lagging behind in terms of our support for artists. Zachariah asks Delbert, may I ask what project you used your funding for? I just wanted some examples of what is possible with the other 75%. That's a great question. And Delbert, it may be misleading to say that you're applying for a project. Very often these tools are just tools that help you build your personal career, as opposed to something that you're going to tour. We don't require that you have a project that you base the award on. But if you have a project that you're going to that you want to tour and you want to talk about that, that's an option. But Delbert, what do you say to that question? Some examples of what you used your funding for.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's very easy to think of it as resources and professional development is what the 75% is needed. And before I said I was a trumpet artist, composer, and educator, and some of those things that I need to do those jobs were like studio equipment. I do a lot of things in film that require me to record my trumpet and send it over, and I didn't have those resources. I would have to go to a studio and buy things. And it also was like a double whammy because the pandemic was approaching, and I stated that I need something else that I could, continue my work, not because all the live performances were over. I would put out studio recordings with video and that kind of thing. Notation software, that's more of my education side of development. So I can give music to students, music that I create. And also, I think 1 year I use the funds to I'm in a lot of the sort of what do you call it, experimental music, and the experimental side is very heavy in what I do, and that required a certain type of trumpet, an experimental trumpet, and also I was able to use the grant to purchase a trumpet because that was the exact, that's what I need. That's what I need to move forward. And it was also sort of advancing because it required more specific tastes. It was no longer a part of this trumpet that I use was no longer going by, just ordinary specs or the standards. It was more accustomed to how I played, how I feel. And so therefore it was an advancement in my performing, but also advancement in my equipment. Things that it's really confusing is like things like trying to make a CD or and I don't know about merchandise, but I didn't use the funds for that because those are more product things, things that are not really going to, yeah, it may help you get to a next level or having an album, but it's more on the sides of the professional development and I would definitely look into the professional development classes and also conferences. And I'd be happy, even after this, to just kind of talk about it, because it's a long thing that a lot of things that have come up now that I would use it on for have I done the program over. So I'd be happy to just speak with you afterwards or something.
Thanks. And I think it's important to note as well that it's going to be different for every artist, but it's different for every discipline too. And just to throw out some other examples of what people have used the funds for, there are musical artists who are not interested in necessarily, having a home studio. We've had artists who have used the money to rent studio time in a professional studio. That's okay. We have artists who have used money, their award, for as much networking and going to different convenings and conferences as possible. The one thing that is not eligible to use the award for is actual touring expenses. So you can't use the award to go on tour because that's something that it's supposed to be developing tools that enable you to do that, not for a touring artist to use this for airfare to go tour, because that should be built. You should be learning how to work with an agent or yourself to negotiate those things, so that that's built in. That's part of your fee. That's a different area. Theater artists may need something different. Installation artists may need something different. I think the bottom line is to think about what you feel you need as tools to get to the next level for yourself, and then propose that you get the award to use for those things, and tell us what they are. Really, the touring travel is pretty much the only hard no. Everything else has been, tell us what you need, and that's part of the process of, as an awardee, of going through the process with a mentor, with AIP staff, to determine what is it that you really need to get to that next level. For some people it's an agent, for some people it's the actual networking. Here's a question: could travel and childcare expenses for residencies or development workshops be appropriate for a dance artist? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, I keep saying this. The guests will agree it's the most amazing program because it is an Indigenous program, and there is recognition of values-based engagement. This is what we talk a lot about, there being other ways of working than what is the commercial touring marketplace. We can plug you into that if you're ready for that, and that's what you want. We can also advocate, and we do advocate, for everything else that is the way of working that you need. And that includes, letting producers, presenters know that you travel as a family. Your child is with you. You need those accommodations to be made. So yeah, we encourage residencies. We encourage all those other ways of engaging community. And, for some artists, the process has been about thinking about how to present that alternative model to presenters. So again, that's a place where, tell us what you're thinking about, what you need to do to get to that level, and that's what you need, then tell that story. Absolutely. That's a good question. Yeah. because the dance artists, yeah, you need to go and do residencies and have work put on you or put work on other dancers, collaborate with other dancers. And, you know, if you're a mom and you need to travel with your child, then absolutely, let's figure out how to make that happen. Let's go ahead and share a couple more things while we wait and see if we have any more questions. We have just a few minutes left, but in closing, we have a promotional packet that we need to get distributed as widely as possible. You know, part of the process over the past 4 or 5 years has been trying to get the word out, and it's not always easy to get the word out nationwide. So if there's any way that you can help distribute, if you have connections, social, you know, networks that you can share this packet with, there's a one sheet about the Native Launchpad and some different resources that can be shared with organizations that might have newsletters or have the means of getting the word out. So you can find that promotional package in this link in the chat. You can also find it via the Native Launchpad webpage. And it's, you know, because it's not a secret that there are geographic imbalances in our reach, in our ability to reach potential candidates. We have many fewer applicants from the East and the Southeast than we do from the Midwest and the Western regions, where Native artists seem to be more visible. The promotional toolkit includes template language and images that can be shared on social media or via email. And if you can, help us spread the word on this opportunity with artists and tribal communities in your network. We'd like everybody to know about it. And then there's also, if you'd like to apply, there's a direct link for you there one more time. Let's see, we've got about 5 minutes. Let's, Qacung, I see something in your chat. Maybe you can fill us in on that. You were around at the very beginning of the creation of the program, and I wasn't, but I'd love for you to uplift those people and talk about that a little bit.
No, okay, Guyana, Ed. No, I wanted to, you know, 2015 we had our first convening of amazing artists, which was in Vancouver, British Columbia, and that was kind of the inception and the birth of AIP, and there was a cohort of amazing artists that were there, which I was, you know, privileged with Bumioa, with my band. We were able to showcase alongside some other amazing artists from around the world. And so one of those folks that were there, I just wanted to uplift our amazing consultants that, you know, that we have, that have been from the get-go. The dream of Tim and Larissa Fasthorse, when they thought, you know, maybe 15,000, or I can't remember what the number was, but it was a small amount of money that was that they were hoping to raise for this new program that they were thinking about, AIP, and then ending up, you know, being this, getting the amazing support from the Ford Foundation and the Mellon Foundation, all of our other amazing sponsors and supporters, which, you know, had our program grow just exponentially. So I just wanted to uplift, you know, not just Tim Wilson, our former ED at WA, but Larissa Fasthorse, Ty Defoe, and Scott Stoner, who have been tirelessly working so hard in developing this program and evaluating it and growing it. So just wanted to give them love.
Thank you. Yeah, and Ty and Larissa have a company called Indigenous Direction. If you're interested in Googling them, they do a lot of work really educating the field, you know, really for any non-Indigenous company that wants to work with Native artists. They they're great about helping build bridges there. So that's Indigenous direction. Delbert, how about, can you talk for a couple minutes about the mentorship experience? Because I think, you know, from when I first met you until today, the direction of your journey has been so strong. I mean, there's been so much change and for me, I kind of saw that like big left turn happen when you got together with your mentor, and I heard about the relationship that you were developing and what you were learning, and I wonder if you could talk for a couple of minutes about that.
Sure. My mentor was David Greenberg, and he's the marketing specialist over at MusicWorks International. And MusicWorks International works with a lot of very high-end professional jazz artists, and they tour them basically internationally, and that's what they do. That's their whole mission and job. And what he's been able to share with me were more of what goes on behind sort of networking and how to build relationships, and the importance of, like lists and image and press and all of this stuff that, I didn't really like to do actually, but I found it to be very helpful while he was there, taking me through just very simple knowing how to get around Adobe or Photoshop and all of these different programs. It was so amazing that world existed, and I had no idea how it pertained to, to my art, to my performing arts. And once I got a hold of that, and we started trading contact lists and introducing to everyone to one another. And I was so happy I did that. It was the moment that I realized how important the network was. And that was a part of the mentorship, was knowing what network is. Things just took off, and he was able to show me how to utilize your network lists and to make it work for your career, and to set it up to where you actually trajectory or shoot off from these networks that you've been making. And so now it's very easy to put two and two together, but before I had no idea that was a work of art within itself. And now I said we're barely getting into the international side. We're still doing so much things in the US and Canada. And before, like I was saying, all I knew was New Mexico and Albuquerque. That's all I was performing before. But now it definitely put me out, and definitely to an international level, national level, to where I don't want to say easy, but things can get done a lot faster now due to the network. And if I'm needing something, I just look in my network list, and that was all David Greenberg who showed me how to do those things, and just small things on how to represent yourself. But again, he was in marketing, and he knew how to do it well. So that's what I took from the mentorship and applied it to what I was already doing. And it just really launched off the career, and the cash amount as well as the unrestricted amount, it all worked towards the launching of the career. And just a little bit on the end with the unrestricted amount, I ended up using that for a family therapist on how, because I wanted the biggest thing to me was keeping my family together while on this journey. And so I actually paid a family therapist, someone who was an artist who understood what I had to do, and things to stay away from, to things to invest in, that kind of thing. And I'm glad I did that, because now my whole life has changed. Doing music is my full-time act now. Before it wasn't. I was, in the hospital field, and I was also a teacher at our community college doing music. So it really changed my life around.
Well, thanks. Thank you so much, Delbert. It's been amazing watching, in 3 years, how your life and your career has changed. And everyone out there know that, these are the kind. Now you're a resource to AIP. You were an artist in the program, and now you're a resource. So I would imagine that you'll be a mentor to someone before too long. But there's a lot of great information in Delbert's head to get out there to you folks. So, but we're at time, and I want to thank you for joining us. We're going to bring up the AIP webpage one more time, so you can write that down. There's an AIP Facebook page, which you should go to and like, and there's contact information for me, for the program manager. Please feel free to reach out with any new or follow-up questions. Reach out directly, and we look forward to seeing those applications. I want to thank our guests, Delbert and Qacung, and thank you for joining us. So take care.